we don't want to launch something unless we feel like it's going to be positively disruptive in the market, right? Something new, something innovative, a new modality, contrast therapy or pneumatic compression, whatever it is, something that's going to change the game.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Today's guest joined a niche sporting goods business 10 years ago with less than 500K in revenue and went on to lead a team in creating a totally new category and what is now a leading global brand doing in excess of 200 million in sales.
You know, growing up as a kid, I always wanted to be a sports agent. Jerry Maguire was my favorite movie. I really was, inspired by being able to create things, right? And figure out how we could craft a company and a brand and a strategy that differentiated from others. We are a technology, a products and innovation company, and we're very thoughtful in how we deliver products and why. The products are changing the physiology of the human body. That's kind of the way we think about product development. It starts from the top. Let's make the best of the best, and then what can we do to reach more people and bring people into the technology?
So please welcome Mr. Jim Huether, CEO of Hyperice, to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Mr. Jim Huether, thank you for inviting us to your wonderful office. Is this the HQ of Hyperice?
This is HQ. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's very, very, very nice. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Last workout and recovery session.
Ooh, okay. I actually did a Pilates workout last night, which I just got into, actually. I'd never done it in my whole life, and there's a company called Frame, which is pretty innovative, that it's at-home Pilates, which I did for the first time. Really worked me out. It was great. I do a recovery session almost every night. Normatech's kind of my go-to, of course, a Hyperice technology. Also do Peloton and have a membership to a gym as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So Hyperice, now I kind of know a little bit about the answer, but where did the name originate? What's the story there?
Oh, it's a great story. So I'm the CEO, so we have a founder as well who's president and head of product and has been very involved in the brand now since the founding. But Anthony Katz was actually a former basketball coach and teacher, and he was introduced to Kobe Bryant. He had a product idea around ice compression, and got an opportunity to meet Kobe and show an early innovation. This is back in 2012. And so Kobe took a liking to the product and said, hey, this is something really innovative. It's unique. It could help me with icing cryotherapy. If you can make something that I would wear and the athlete would use, I'll wear it on the sidelines. And so Anthony at the time was inspired to create this product at the time, back in 2012, and was also very obsessed with Kobe Bryant as a player. A big-time fan of Kobe. The name Hyperice is actually after Kobe's Hyper Dunk Nike shoe, the Hyper Dunk. So we took Hyper Ice. Icing was the pillar of recovery at the time. And this is before we had electronics in our brand. So it's very early, and that's where the Hyperice name came. So we still have kind of a close connection to Nike and of course, Kobe Bryant.
Right. I remember in the very early days, I must have received an email from someone here. And it was just talking about how this was going to be the next big thing, and some of the people that were involved or invested in it. And I remember thinking at the time, who's this new company? Because it looked like, I don't know whether it was Anthony, but there was definitely, it was obviously very small, because whether the email came directly from him or it just seemed this kind of like little business. They'd obviously got some great people that were excited about it, which I thought, okay, that's curious. But I remember looking at it, and it was this sort of these kind of attachments essentially, and I thought, okay, I didn't fully understand it at the time, or I didn't understand the relevance in the market I was in terms of fitness. But then I think they probably went from the sort of ice compression to what was the first roller product? Was it the roller that you came out with?
Yeah, it was a Viper.
Okay,
vibrating roller, high intensity. Yep.
Right. And what was how was the shift from the sort of compression side to the foam roller then?
Yeah, so that was a big transition, and that actually was an important transition for the company. And I joined in 2014, so I've almost been here 10 years. So Anthony and I joined forces, I think it was February 2014, and the idea at the time was there was an ice compression device, which you just referenced, that was out there. It gained some traction within the elite athlete populations, but we were a little bit more of a sporting goods company at the time, and we wanted to be more of a technology company. We wanted to transition into much more of an Apple, a Tesla type company, as opposed to kind of prior sporting goods company. So the launch of the Viper was really important because it was our first electronics product. We actually put that product on Kickstarter intentionally just to garner some of the tech buzz. We were covered by Gizmodo and Wired and some of the really big publications. And that was a really pivotal point for the brand, just to transition more technology, more innovation, have that perception of innovation. And that product did really well for us. I think we made $3 or $4 million in the first year and got some really nice distribution, which at the time was a lot, right? Because we had done 400,000 to 500,000 prior with the ice compression device, and kind of created a springboard for us for other innovations.
I think that was for me, and obviously I'd seen you guys before. That for me was something that was like, oh, okay, I get that, because foam rollers are probably, I guess Trigger Point would probably been the sort of brand in the fitness space that had been around previously, and I guess everybody understood vibration more or less, and then combining that with a roller seemed pretty interesting. So were you the first people at the time then, were you the first ones to combine that vibration with a roller?
We were. It was the first ever kind of high intensity vibration roller. And what was so dynamic about it is it actually changed the experience for the athlete. So when you got on it, there were not only scientific benefits, but it just felt really good and different, right? And so it quickly became a training room staple. We had some of the most elite athletes on earth using it daily and kind of getting addicted to the product because of what it was doing to the soft tissue. And we learned a lot from that product too. It was kind of the first technology where we really took consumer feedback from athletes, trainers, and sports performance experts, which is part of our secret sauce now, right? And then applied it into our product development phase. And that's been something that through the different innovations of Hyperice, we've stayed true to, right? We're fortunate that we have the accessibility to some of the leading minds in the space, specifically fitness and sports performance, and they're instrumental in our product development initiatives.
Right. So your background then, were you in the tech space previously?
I was, yeah, sports tech.
Right. And so what do you think how did your background prepare you for the role at Hyperice then, would you say?
Yeah, great question. I think, growing up as a kid, I always wanted to be a sports agent. Jerry Maguire was my favorite movie. I grew up in Silicon Valley. My father was kind of in sports entertainment in some capacity, so I was around it. And when I did my grad school, when I did my MBA, I got kind of fascinated with case studies, looking at what made businesses tick, right? Was it leadership? Was it product differentiation? Competitive barriers? What were kind of the key things that made a company a Netflix versus a Blockbuster, or whatever it may be? And because of that, it kind of sparked the entrepreneurialism in me. And I had a few roles early in my career. One, I was at Citigroup, which I learned a lot of finance there, kind of a big finance company, obviously. I worked for AEG early in my career, working with the Lakers and the Clippers and the Kings and boxing and things like that. But I really was, inspired by being able to create things, right? And figure out how we could craft a company and a brand and a strategy that differentiated from others. So I think it was a combination of sports background, kind of a fascination with business and what makes companies tick, and then had 2 to 3 entrepreneurial experiences early in my career. Were able to leverage that into, an opportunity here at Hyperice.
You mentioned an interesting point there, which I wrote down. You said you was always fascinated on the key things that made the companies different. When you came into the company to now, has that thinking process remained the same, or has it evolved? And if so, how would you best describe that?
Great question. It has evolved a lot. It's evolved a lot. So I came in, I was the 7th employee, I believe 6th or 7th. At the time we had, Anthony done a really good job on the early kind of brand framework strategy, right? We had Kobe and we had LeBron using the products authentically. Most brands would die for that, right? It was amazing. But we didn't have a strategy, we didn't have a team. And so we really early on committed to, let's be like Apple, right? Let's create 1 to 2 really game-changing innovations every year. We don't want to create a bunch of Me Too products. Like if it's not innovative and it's not going to change the way people think about the human body and how they move, we're not doing it, right? And we stuck to that for a really long time. Now later, you get a little bit more pressure to be constantly launching new products and your brand gets larger and, you have to continue to to drive goals and objectives. So it changes a little bit. But I think that the core of what we do and why this brand is unique has stayed true, right? We are a technology, a products and innovation company, and we're very thoughtful in how we deliver products and why. So that's been consistent. But to your question on structuring a team and growing internationally, making sure we're hitting objectives, those things all I think change a little bit as you get bigger. When you're doing 3 million versus 200 million, it's just a very different role, right? But we've always focused on team. That stayed very consistent, right? We built this team like a pro sports franchise where everybody's collaborative, they're working together. That's made us better. So there's a lot of common themes, but I think a lot of differences too.
Introducing the next big thing in functional training, the Escape Barrow, a revolutionary training tool that combines a loaded farmer's carry with a sled push to develop hip, grip, and core strength. Developed in partnership with Pete Holman, inventor of the TRX Rip Trainer and Nautilus Glute Drive, the Escape Barrow can be rolled, pushed, dragged, and carried. The Escape Barrow packs a punch with an impressive load capacity of 440 pounds, and with a 2-stage galvanized paint covering process, it's also ideal for outdoor use. So head over to escapefitness.com/barrow. That's escapefitness.com/barrow to find out more. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
On the product brand side, how relevant is that in the success from what you've seen? I suppose because you mentioned that you're not a traditional sports goods company, which is clear you're not. It's a very different feel than that. But how I suppose when you're focusing, how important outside of the people, obviously the team, but how important or how much are you looking at the product as being part of what you do, or the brand and the story? Like, how do you put those things together in your mind?
Yeah, I think the brand has always been very important to us. We're delivering premium products. They're expensive. We're not the low price leader by any means, right? And we're able to, humbly, we're able to garner the price because we have quality products. But I think the uniqueness of the company really does come from brand, because the authenticity with Kobe, the early stages with athletes, seeing the products on TV and starting to learn about what the recovery space is all about, right? We've been able to be on the forefront of this entirely new category. And we've stayed true to kind of the roots with pro athletes and keeping that authenticity. So if you were to ask 10 people, what's Hyperice? A lot of people would say a sports performance brand, right? And we've expanded into wellness quite a bit, and we're very strong in fitness, but people still think of us that way because we have the partnerships with the NFL and the NBA, et cetera. So I think there's been years where we over-invested in it and years where maybe we didn't invest enough in that story because we were trying to expand into different stories. But again, at the core, it's a differentiator because there's a lot of brands. Like, I've been in many companies prior to Hyperice, and you have to pay athletes to wear your products, or you have to pay them to endorse. This is very authentic. They're using the products already. It makes our job easy, right?
Yeah, I guess it must be difficult as well, I suppose, having some big success on certain products that you almost get known for, almost like I'm trying to think of a particular brand, but to avoid that becoming who you are, because in the space things do trend, and 1 minute they're popular. We talked about Nike just earlier, and so it's trying to sort of, I suppose, not necessarily just be tied to that one thing. Is that difficult to achieve consistently, do you think?
Yes, and that happened to us.
Right.
So in 2018, and you mentioned the Viper, so we launched our ice compression in 2012. We had our first electronics in 2014. We had a few other products in between, and our big innovation that really expanded our reach and distribution and revenue was the Hypervolt, right? The world's first portable, powerful, quiet percussion gun. And we delivered that product in 2018, and it just went completely viral. I mean, we couldn't keep these things. I remember the launch date vividly. I remember where I was sitting, everything. It was February 24th, and we launched that product, and it was just our web orders were just like, we were like, We just broke every record in the company's history in 3 minutes,
Wow.
right? We sold out in 4 hours all over the world. We couldn't keep that product in stock for 6 months. It was like, make them faster, make them faster. We couldn't do it. And because of that, we were known as the Hypervolt company. And people were like, oh, you work for Hypervolt, right? And the product became bigger than the brand. So I think that's something. And then when we acquired Normatech, which came later, we acquired Normatech in 2020, and that was a very prominent brand. A lot of people knew the Normatech boots, and they had a powerful presence in the sports performance space. Because of the acquisitions and some of the like bigger product launches, it's actually been challenging to maintain, awareness of the Hyperice brand name, believe it or not, because sometimes the products can get a little bit bigger than the brand. So there is a balance there that we're constantly working on. Like, how much do we promote the name of the product, and is that its own brand versus the overall Hyperice, which is the all-encompassing brand.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back to the early days, you started in 2014. I read about the story where you were turning over around about 400,000 in revenue and struggling to meet payroll. Talk us through that story, and in particular, how you, because I know this is a challenge I've been through a number of times in our career, how you kept that faith through what was like, damn, like great idea, great company, great athletes, but we got to pay our people.
Yeah, it's and there's some good stories there in the early stages. I think we've never wavered from the belief in the brand or the space, because the products are changing the physiology of the human body, right? So the impact that we're having, we talk a lot about that with our team in team meetings and such. The revenue that we deliver is a representation of the impact that we're having. And these products truly do change the way you feel, they change the way you move, they change the way you live, right? So we always knew that despite struggles, we knew we were going to have funding challenges, we knew we were going to have, payroll challenges in the early stages, that the impact we would have was so great that we'd be able to overcome those obstacles. But there's been challenging times. 2014, I was 5 months into the role, and I'll never forget, I walked into the office from a lunch meeting, and our controller at the time was looking at me like, hey, when we were trying to get a $100,000 check to cover payroll at that time, and we had an investor Jake Ellenberger, I love Jake, who was a UFC fighter who literally delivered his $100,000 investment. I ran 2 red lights to make it to the bank on a Friday afternoon to cash it, and we made payroll Monday. Like, we were that close in the early stages, and but no one ever wavered. And we had our VP of sales now, our senior VP, Ashley Price, who's a former pro athlete. She came on as kind of an entry-level salesperson and kind of led our Kickstarter initiative at the time, and now she's a senior VP at the company. There's been that level of grit that I think you get through athletics, that a lot of people in the team have, that allows us to be a little bit more like, I'd say, malleable with different challenges, so that we can, stay true, project that confidence that the team needs, that we're going to be able to overcome any obstacle.
Was it tough, those moments when you're like hours away from?
Yeah, it was, and we've had moments like that even over the past 3 to 4 years, where you're trying to do something, a big initiative, or you're trying to acquire a company, and then you have COVID, hit, or you have disruption in your supply chain, and your forecast changes dramatically. Like, there's just a lot of things that sometimes externally, as people don't see, but internally, there's a lot of really pivotal moments that make a brand what it is, and either determine whether you're successful or not successful.
What do you do in terms of you as a leader? How do you, when you go home on an evening and you've got those things, what do you do to sort of make sure that when you come in the next morning, you're kind of ready to fight a new day?
Yeah, I think that first off, I've been in this role for 10 years now, so we've seen a lot happen in the space. And I think I do draw a lot of, overcoming adversity and things from sports, just growing up playing sports, most of my life in my early stages. I draw a lot from there. But I think you really have to have the awareness, the social awareness of your role and responsibility, and how much people feed off your energy. Like you have to understand that. And you see it in pro sports too a lot, right? Like a player like, I was watching the Padres the other night, Fernando Tatis Jr., like he comes in, energized, electric, the whole team responds, right? So I think you have to be, in any kind of senior leadership role, you have to be a rock. That doesn't mean that you can't, you don't have to be overly optimistic all the time, but you have to be able to project that we can overcome an obstacle. Because as soon as people think that you might be questioning a decision or a strategy, then they're going to question a strategy. So I think for us, it's been easier because, again, we believe in the mission and we believe in the category and what it can do for humanity, right? And that's a really big thing for people to get behind. So it's easy to rally people around that mission. But I think you definitely have to be consistent, and you have to be very socially aware. And you kind of have to have some guts too, right? You got to be able to handle the tough moments.
Yeah, very interesting. There was quite a transformational story, really, like going from where you were. I don't know what your revenue is now, but it's certainly a lot more than 400,000. Going from a small company, which I can relate to, what would you say are some of the key steps that you recognize that I suppose were sort of key moments in the continued growth of the company? Would you say, you mentioned like the Hypervolt, for example. So what if you have to look back during that sort of almost 10-year period, what are some things that stand out, or decisions that were made?
Yeah, I think the commitment to always focus on innovation has helped us a lot. And what I mean by that is it's easy as a company you have a big product hit, and then you're like, okay, well, we can just roll the same playbook for the next 2 years because things are going great and it's awesome. And it's easy for you to get complacent and to say, okay, well, maybe we don't have to think 3, 4, 5 years out. But that time period comes up fast, right? Again, this is my 10th year here. So you always have to be thinking ahead 2, 3, 4 years, especially when you're in consumer product business, because you have to be very good about guessing what you think is going to be your next hit in 2, 3, 4 years. So I think we've done a good job there, but there's been years where we felt that our innovation pipeline wasn't strong enough, and it's hard for you to move that quickly because products take a long time to develop. People think, you can create a product and it's out the next 6 months. It takes 2 years. We have products that are going to take 3 years from today that we know will not launch until 2026, Q4 2026. We just had a meeting right now where we're talking about a 2026 product. Wow. So I think there's been times over the last 10 years where, our innovation pipeline was great and we were thinking very far out. And there were other times where we were really focused on the now and sometimes forgot a little bit about the planning long term. So I think that's something that you always have to be thinking around in markets that get very competitive around innovation. And Apple's done a really good job of that, right? Their cadence is so good with here's a new product, here's a new innovation. 4 years down the road, they have something else game changing. But we've made some good decisions on strategy that I think have helped us long term. And there's been some things on the marketing side early on that we guessed wrong on for sure. And it took us some time to unwind and kind of pivoted maybe the wrong way a few times. But for the most part, I think we balance out.
And how much of it, it's sort of it's a difficult question, but how much of it do you think is timing? And the reason I say that is you could have done this 15 years ago, and maybe the market wouldn't have been ready as it is today. There definitely seems, if you look at what's happening, if you listen to podcasts and talk to trainers, there seems to be this sort of real understanding and awareness of the category. And we talked a little bit off camera where people are still figuring out how to put all that together. There's definitely a lot of gaps in it, but there's definitely an understanding, okay, this is really important. Whereas probably 10, 15 years ago, the general sort of philosophy was work hard and play hard and don't rest, sleeps for the week and everything, and things have changed. So how much do you think timing sort of helped with the overall sort of business plan?
I think timing's been critical for us. I do think that everything has kind of been set as building blocks for future successes. So I look back at when we launched the ice compression, which predates me, right? And what that did is it created authenticity with trainers and performance experts. Who's this company? There's a really cool device, and they created a product that's being worn by Kobe on the sidelines, right? So we had the credibility. In 2014, we were able to go approach those same trainers and experts and say, here's an idea, what do you think, right? They said, oh, okay, you guys have some credibility. We'll give you our thoughts and ideas. Helped us develop the Viper, which launched, right? Viper, because it was popular in fitness, created a lot of distribution points for us. You know, we created a partnership with Equinox and Lifetime Fitness and some of these key fitness influencers as well, and we're able to get into some key markets internationally. So when we launched the Hypervolt, which was, you know, our best mass market consumer product, we had the distribution, we had the knowledge of what vibration and percussion did to the soft tissue, right? And we had a good consumer base. And that's what contributed to that product being kind of viral for us. So a lot of people think, hey, you know, you can just put a product out and it's a one-hit wonder. I think for us, it was a lot of things happened to get to that point. And there was a process that then created the ability for that product to be as big as it was.
Because now I guess you're at a size where in some cases you can almost, I suppose you can't totally move a market, but you can have a big impact on moving the market, whereas years ago you probably weren't in that position. You didn't have the distribution and the awareness. And with innovation, for example, how do you approach innovation? Because I guess we all understand the value of it, or most people understand the value of it, but there definitely seems to be a big element of timing. You know, you can come up, you've got a device, meditation, which you can talk about shortly, but it's when you see an idea, whether it's internal development or you partner up with someone, how do you figure out timing in order to say, okay, this will be the right time to launch this, or maybe we need to just hang on because this just could be too early for everybody to kind of really absorb?
Yeah. So usually what we do is we stick with our original philosophy kind of in the founding stages or early stages of the company, and we don't want to launch something unless we feel like it's going to be positively disruptive in the market, right? Something new, something innovative, a new modality, contrast therapy or pneumatic compression, whatever it is, something that's going to change the game, so to speak. But then we'll take that technology and think about the different channels and ways we can reach people. For example, you know, the Hypervolt, obviously a product that originally was used in the training room for the fitness expert or the trainer, and then we launched the Hypervolt Go, which was, you know, a smaller, lighter, still powerful but not quite as powerful product that could fit in your bag or on the go, a little bit more price accessible. That could fit into a Target, right, or a retailer that is a little more price sensitive. So we kind of look at it from what's the modality, what's the experience, and then from there, can we create different variants of the product that might reach different consumer populations? And by doing that, I think we stay true to the brand, right, where we're going to create the best of the best and we want to be premium. But we also can, you know, we're not naive in thinking that every consumer is going to spend $800 for, you know, a Normatech device. There's some people that just aren't going to spend $800, right? And we have a Normatech Go at $399 now that is a little bit more accessible. So that's kind of the way we think about product development. It starts from the top, you know, let's make the best of the best, and then what can we do to reach more people and bring people into the technology?
Mm-hmm. With your brand in particular, like you've obviously got a lot of IP, my guess, but you also have, there's a ton of imitations. You mentioned just now the fact that you're, I suppose, trying to almost competing with yourself now at different price points, but still having the brand. How do you manage that? Because I guess you can't go out and just fight everybody, even if they are infringing. How do you sort of look at the protecting of the product, dealing with imitations, but not getting so distracted that you're just constantly fighting battles all the time?
Yeah, and it's funny because our sales and BD leadership team that have been here for a long time, we talk about this all the time, because in 2018 when we couldn't keep the Hypervolt on the shelf, as I mentioned. It was just, we couldn't make it fast enough. And I remember expressing to our team, hey, this is going to be the easiest it'll ever be, right? It's never going to be this easy. And everybody was like, well, man, I just have to take some orders. And we just got an order for 5,000 units, like VP product development. Where's our product? It's not here yet. I can't sell it. And I said, it's going to get more challenging. We're now opening up an entirely new modality within the category. Everyone's going to start creating different innovations to try to chase us. Competition's going to get fierce, lower price points. So we got to really build the brand and continue to not only be on the forefront of innovation, but the brand has to stand for something. We need to use our reach and authenticity with athletes as a differentiator, right? So people come to the brand because they enjoy the company and they like the mission and they like other products, right? So I think the brand has been a good competitive barrier for lower priced alternatives. But that doesn't mean that we're not constantly thinking about how we fight off competition or how we differentiate our product through innovation. So it's kind of a combination. You mentioned IP, that's obviously big, but it's continuing to innovate and then making sure the brand strength is where it needs to be so a consumer will jump up, right? I don't want to spend $79 on this product. I'll go spend $149 and get a Hyperice product because I love the brand and I love what it represents.
Coming up next.
It's much easier if you can create organic pull,
Right.
as opposed to non-organic push, right? It's more cost efficient. When you look at some of the biggest companies in the world, they've been relentlessly focused on the consumer. I love this space in general because there's a lot of energy around it. If we can get you on a Viper roller, or you can get you with a Hypervolt or in Normatech boots, generally 9 out of 10, sometimes 10 out of 10 times, the consumer loves the experience. The recovery space in general is getting really hot in fitness, right? Everybody's thinking about how do I create, something that is differentiated in my club. And so we're excited about the future there. If we can continue to create seamless ways for people to experience the technologies, then they just become a norm within the fitness community. I think there's going to be a lot of scientific breakthroughs around every part of human health through the advancement of wearable technology. Fitness facilities are starting to understand that we need to create wellness experiences inside our clubs.
Investment, you've done a great job. It's an area that I've done a huge amount, but I know today, I was reading before I came in here, you managed to raise about 147 million, recently 100 million. How have you, without going into all the details, but how have you been able to sell such an ambitious dream? Because I suppose even going back to your earlier days, sort of for people even that probably know the space, it's like, okay, this is brand new category that isn't really anything at the moment. There's not really many competitors. We're going to create this product. This is going to be a several $100 million company. How were you able to sort of get people on board and make pretty significant investments in that unknown future?
Yeah, I think, and there's some funny early stories too, because I remember like vividly, there were a couple, key investors that we approached early on when we were a valuation of about 5 million or 10 million, and they passed on the deal at the time and said, the most this could be is like a $10 million brand, right? Recovery is not going to get that big, it's niche. And we were saying, no, it's not, because the addressable market is every human that moves. When you think about it, like if we can be that broad and have that type of impact, this is big. I think that the athlete connections really helped us early on, because you had a lot of athletes who wanted to invest themselves because they believed in what we were doing and they'd seen the impact that it had on their own bodies for performance or longevity. So we were able to kind of market, hey, these are the athletes that we're marketing to or that are using the products, and they're actually putting their own money in this company because of what it's done for their own performance, right? And so that created kind of a groundswell of interest. Hey, these 5 or 10 top athletes in their sport have invested in this company. Like, what is the secret sauce? What is it doing? This must be validated, right, by science. I think we did a really good job early with backing up our brand with science and showing, here's some studies on how it can improve range of motion. That was big for the investing community. And we were able to attract, the NFL and the NBA invested in 2020. That was really big for us because you have two of the most prominent sports leagues putting their money into the brand.
What made them want to invest in it? Is that something they normally do?
Yeah, so they do some investments, but I think what was unique and what actually closed the deal for them was they went and queried all of their trainers. And they said, what is the brand that you guys are using most in the training rooms and why? And they came back and, we had these years of relationships. They said, we use Hyperice. We use all the Normatech. We use the Hypervolt. We use the Venom. These are what the athletes are authentically using. So for the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball is also a shareholder, for them, it was perfect because it demonstrated that they care about the longevity of their athletes, right? Not only short term from a performance perspective, but long term, which is great for the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball brand, right? That's an important attribute to be projecting that. And they really did put their money where their mouth is. They were involved in some of our product testing initiatives. They created sideline solutions for us so that our products could be accessible on the court or on the field or on the pitch or whatever it may be. But that allowed us, again, just really good validation about how impactful the products could be. It allowed us to go to the investment community and garner a lot of interest.
How would you, for people who are looking to raise money for ideas, how important is it to, I suppose, choose those investment partners? Like, it looks like there was almost this two-way relationship with people like the NFL where they were an investor, but obviously because they're an investor, on the flip side, getting involved in product endorsements, kind of being involved in actually their businesses, which is kind of a goal for you and the products. Do you think that was a key part as opposed to just going with someone that just has cash only and says, okay, there you go, guys,
I do. I think finding strategic investors who can also add value is really important. And I think it's important to kind of align on the style in which you work too is very important, because these investors that you have, whether things are going great or they're going bad, right, or they're going medium, whatever it is, you're going to be working with them closely. So you need to find groups that want to add value, really believe in the mission, vision, whatever you're projecting. Like, they got to be aligned there. I think if you just take money, there's definitely times where that's needed for companies, but there's a lot of investors that are strategic. And so you may as well try to align with someone who you think can bring some additive value, who wants to contribute, right? Because there is an aligned incentive there. A good example, Rory McIlroy, right? Invested. He did a great investment for us in 2021, his group, which is just an awesome group. He's an amazing athlete. His team, Sean, and they're just awesome all around. Their first, I said to them, hey, do we need to do marketing, blah, blah, blah. And they said, look, we're invested. We want to help, right? Rory's putting his own money in here, and let's use him. Let's drive a really innovative story. He loves the products and the brand. Let's find creative ways to use his reach to drive awareness for the products, right? That's a great example of a strategic investment, right? It's someone who really wants to help. They're aligned with the mission, vision, and he's been really helpful.
Is there any things that you've learned that you probably would avoid or advice you give to people to be careful of and not to do? Or have you sort of had a pretty easy time with that whole fundraising side of things?
I think just, really kind of vet your partners. Just it's definitely worthwhile to just kind of understand the culture fit, the backgrounds, how they can contribute. Because they are going to be partners, right? And that's important. I think sometimes you're moving so fast, you're just like, oh, I'm going to grab whatever. And it's worth taking the time and finding someone because when you have someone who's really aligned, who cares about the mission and vision, you'd be shocked at how many opportunities come from that, right? So that's been big for us, really has been.
What about you've touched on it a little bit, but the role of partnerships in your growth, Kobe Bryant, LeBron, just to name a few of the bigger names there and many others. How critical has that been in I suppose the success of getting your brand out there?
It's been pretty big. I think one of and they all have different contributions. So for example, Patrick Mahomes is an investor. and he loves getting the products first and giving us feedback on early prototypes. So we sent him a product last year when he was recovering for the Super Bowl, right? In between those 2 weeks, we had a product variation specifically designed for him to help him, get through those couple weeks. Erling Haaland, the global football superstar right now, right? Who's an investor in the company. Hyperice was his first investment. Same thing. He wants to be involved in the product innovation. Send me the first thing you have as soon as you get it, right? Lindsey Vaughn, who's kind of a seasoned vet investor. She came on board in 2013. She's contributed to probably 6 products of ours and given us feedback. And of course, she had a lot of injuries during her professional career, so her feedback's been instrumental. And then there's other athletes who just want to use their reach to help. Like, hey, let's do like a PR interview around Men's Health or GQ and talk about the products, or let me post you on social media. But I will say, and I say this very humbly, we're fortunate because the products kind of create the credibility with the athletes. We don't have to really, they're already using the product. So it makes it easier to storytell. It makes it easier for them to promote. And it's been a really, really kind of secret weapon for us to be able to grow the way we have.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. Those relationships are dreams for many product companies, I guess, to be able to have them. But it does sort of open the question in my mind, and you kind of touched a bit, is if you are thinking about creating any kind of product, I just wonder if this is your philosophy. It's like, look, if you just go out there to make the best product that you could imagine making for a particular person, then a lot of the bits that some people have to really almost arm wrestle to make happen will happen because people will come to it because it's just the best product out there. Like, what do you think about that?
I totally agree with that. I think that's hard to do though all the time, right?
It is. Well, it kind of, I suppose, developing products for a long time, I think it depends. If you're passionate about something, sometimes I suppose maybe you get too caught up in sort of having these really high standards. But then on the other side, it's almost like, well, you can either be forced to put something out because you need to get something out and the market wants something and it's almost like a bit of a Me Too thing, or it's like what Apple do. It's like, okay, well, we're just going to probably wait until we've got absolutely the best thing we can do. And when I look at those two strategies, and I love studying companies like you do probably, but when you get under the bonnet of those people that have done like what you've done and the Apples, that story does seem to be consistent, that they just seem to attract people because it's just the best. It looks the best, it performs the best, and even though it's probably a little bit more, it just becomes aspirational where people go towards it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, it's much easier if you can create organic pull,
right,
as opposed to non-organic push, right? It's more cost efficient. It's like the viral moment with the Hypervolt. Like there was so much pull because the product was great, right? And we had the distribution at the time.
And it was a nice, using a bunch of the products that have been out there. I suppose for me, I remember the first time I picked it up, I think it was at a trade show, and kind of the feel of it, and then the sort of feel of the movement and the sound. I'm like, these guys have sort of figured that out, because there was other ones I think on the market around about the same time. I don't know what came first, but I do remember I picked, there was a couple of them there at the time, and I picked it up, and I thought, they've definitely nailed the thing that I think is quite important. And I suppose if you're a salesperson selling a product, how great is it just to be so excited that this is such a good product? You almost don't have to sell it then, do you?
Totally, it's huge. And you hit on two things that I actually love, and we have similar philosophies. One is, if you're selling and everybody's selling, right? I'm selling every day, whatever that is. If it's a product, or it's an investor, or it's a new investment opportunity, and you believe in what you're doing and you truly believe in it, whether it be a product or a service or whatever it is, it makes a big difference. It just does. And I think to your point about focusing on the product or service and making it really, really good for the consumer is key. And that's what when you look at some of the biggest companies in the world, they've been relentlessly focused on the consumer. And if you start to lose that and you lose that connection and you focus too much internally and you get disconnected from the consumer, sometimes companies can lose their way. So that's something here that we constantly strive for is, there's been a couple times where we have a product ready to go and we're like, does the consumer even really want this? This is really cool, but is this what the consumer wants? Yes or no? And sometimes it's a no. I mean, we've shelved products because we got to the final stages and we just didn't think it was going to have a big enough impact. So I think that's important, and I think it is something that as companies grow and expand, you have to constantly wrestle with and make sure you're staying in the close connection with the consumer.
2020 Consumer Electronic Show in Vegas, I think it was the last one before the pandemic. I went there and there was a hall downstairs where they kind of have all the small little ideas that come out. And I met this lady, and I've actually got it on video. I was trying this sort of meditation device, and I was really curious about it because I've always tried to meditate, but I've just struggled to sit down for long enough and make it work. And the lady, I'm not sure whether she was the inventor or not, but sort of showed me this thing which you held, and it just sort of helped connect my mind to my body and get through a session. And I read that meditation, 4.2 billion industry, and you guys, I think, I'm pretty sure that was the same product you purchased, the core device. Yep. So tell us about why you guys are sort of invested and believe that meditation space is an important one for your future.
Yeah, so we always had our position in physical health, right? We had products that were affecting the physiology of the body and they were having an impact physically. But we knew that to fully have an impact on one's body and health, right, you needed both physical and mental. And we knew that you could kind of one could accelerate the other, right? If the mind was right, the physical would be stronger. And if you could get, the physical could be enhanced by the mental, right? Just as you approach recovery and you approach thinking about health and the physiology of your body. So we always wanted to get into mindfulness, meditation, but we needed to do it if we were going to enter in a way that was true to the brand. We are a consumer products company, so we thought about just doing an app, but it just didn't quite stick as much for our company. We felt like it would feel a little bit out of place. And so we saw the company you referenced, Core, Sarah McDevitt, the founder, who's fantastic, and actually had a background in sports. She played basketball in college.
Okay.
And was a Stanford grad and has a bunch of some awesome accolades around how she developed the product. But her and Brian Bowles developed a technology that was kind of forward-thinking innovation. It combined haptics, lights and vibration, with meditation content, but did it in a way where you could actually track your biometrics, so you could see how your body was responding to meditation. So when we saw that device and we heard of that device, we were actually introduced to that by an investor, and we had the first conversation. We said, this could be perfect, because we had athletes like Naomi Osaka and Rory McIlroy who were very outspoken on the importance of meditation and mindfulness and mental health, right? So we were hearing it from our own athletes. Like, I remember Naomi came to us and was like, hey, I was on a podcast with her, and she said, hey, are we doing anything in mental health, right? And so it was in our ear, and when we saw this technology, we said, this is it. This is perfect. It's a physical product. It has an experiential play to it. The data is awesome. It allows people to have a little bit more stickiness with their meditation. People are coming back with a 90% return rate year over year, which is unheard of, right? The competitors that have just apps were dropping off at 20% or whatever it was. So we had a first conversation with Sarah and really aligned. She was a big Hyperice user because she had played basketball. And she's like, I love the brand. This is a dream. We both kind of aligned on this is perfect. And we acquired the company in 2021. I think that one was actually the hardest to integrate because you had two very different, it was the same space in recovery, but two very different modalities, right? The consumer who's using the Hypervolt versus the consumer that's using meditation, and a different delivery mechanism. You're using meditation in kind of a quiet place, You're using your Volt, wherever you want, right? So there are definitely some challenges in the initial integration, but the product is amazing, it really is.
And where do you see that category going then? Because we had another chat about this sort of the understanding now of the brain and how that's really affecting everything, and stress related to preventing you from losing weight, optimizing your performance if you're an athlete. I think there's so much more that we can learn, and we're already understanding about really that everything physical really starts on the mental side. So where do you personally see that space going, and some of the things that you're probably looking at in terms of the sort of mind meditation?
Yeah, I think there's two big channels for it right now for us. One is obviously the performance sector, and seeing how breath work, meditation can impact performance. We have a lot of pitchers who are using the product, prior to pitching in a game, just getting their mind right, getting the body right. And the other one is just workplace wellness. You had all this added stress during COVID and people burning out. And there's still a lot of that, right, coming out of COVID. But we've had a lot of companies step up and say, hey, we want to provide this for our employee populations and see if we can improve performance, happiness, all the different elements that are important in a workforce. So that's been something that has been successful for us. And I think the general fitness consumer is learning more about meditation and breath training and how it can impact the way that they move and the way that they feel. And so as more awareness comes, the greater pull we'll have with this product. But it's very, very early still. It's still very, I'd say, niche. I mean, people have the understanding of it, but I'd say that it's like 6 to 7 years, behind where we are with the physical products.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I as mentioned, we interviewed Dan Metcalf, who's kind of, again, quite ahead of his field in this area, and he was saying that whether it's an athlete, an executive, someone in the military, you kind of, there's a base level where most people are sort of similar in their genetic capabilities, and so okay, let's assume that we're on a sort of level playing field, and so 80% of the difference of people's performance is mental, whether it's athlete, executive, etc. And that 80% is something that you can influence through your, being able to control your mindset, how you approach situations. I know the mix. If you're any kind of martial arts, I guess that's something that's pretty well understood on that elite sports level. And Dan sort of said to my son, he says, okay, because he's into basketball, he said, right, how much time do you spend practicing for basketball each week? And how much time do you spend training your mind for basketball each week? And of course, the answer is nothing, zero. Mm-hmm. And I think more and more it will become, I suppose, recognized that as part of becoming an athlete or a business athlete or in a military or whatever, I think they'll start to become almost like, yeah, this is part of your training routine, and people will just do it. I think now it's almost like people probably don't fully understand it and maybe don't believe it, or the research is not compelling enough for people to sort of put that effort. But I do think within time, and maybe sort of podcasts and information comes out, people will start to do that like they're using a Hypervolt.
Yeah.
Because years ago, maybe you were doing foam rolling and now you're using a Hypervolt. But I think even that's a very relatively new thing for people to sort of understand, isn't it?
I totally agree. And I think, too, there's always a turning point in some of these modalities, where all of a sudden it becomes more commonplace. And because meditation is just generally done in a very quiet place, it's harder to get like a viral experiential effect. Yeah. Right? Whereas with Hypervolt and Normatech, you're out there and you go to the gym and you're seeing someone using it, right? A lot of times meditation and breath training is done in your home or wherever it is that's a little bit more personal. So I think, to your point, it's going to be more podcasts, science, digital messaging to get people to understand what it can actually do to the body and why.
And I think some of that comes down to, this is something we can touch on with another one of your products as well, but it's called HyperSmart.
Yep.
I think being able to have data to demonstrate what's going on. I use Aura. I quite like this. I've sort of opened my mind into looking at other things about how my sleep relates to my performance. And I think now there's more and more information about looking at stress, and not just in general, but stress throughout the day, and then how stress affects your decision making throughout the day or your performance throughout the day. And I think, maybe there becomes more things like wearables where it can show you this is where your stress is, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna have like 2 minutes and use my sort of core and just get myself back to normal. Because I think certainly decision making when you're in a stress state, if you have a couple of important choices, if you're not in the right type of mindset, it's very easy to make the wrong decision, and sometimes those decisions can have quite serious impacts. And even if it's just how you deal with an employee when you're stressed and you fire something that you probably shouldn't have done, in those times you probably need to take care of yourself and say, look, I'm not in the right position to probably be responding to this at the moment.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that HyperSmart, there was a lot of intention around HyperSmart. With what we saw in the space was you had your Apple Health and Oura and Whoop, great companies, right? They're both doing really innovative things. We actually have a partnership with Whoop around HyperSmart.
Right.
And the idea behind it is you're basically pulling your activity data and recommending you products and routines in connection to your personalized activity data.
Right.
So if you ran 3 miles and your heart rate was X and you love tennis, for example, and you slept 7 hours, we're going to be able to create a personalized routine with a product that you own that then we can map against that data to see if it's improving your sleep, your recovery, your performance, right? And so as we learn more about the consumer, we can be more acute with our recommendations. And so the partnership with Whoop was great because they obviously have amazing data and they continue to advance a lot of their technologies around biometrics. And our products actually can change the data for the better, because you can see how your body's responding based on the use of our tech. I'm sleeping better, my recovery score is better. So it creates a win-win benefit for the consumer, and both parties, are able to kind of articulate how that value proposition is turning into a benefit. So that was something we launched in beta form in late 2021, and we continued to advance it. But that was a moment where I was really excited when we launched that, because it was our first kind of our first technology that was more software-based, that then would allow us to get more biometric insights that would then allow us to be sharper with our recommendations and see what was actually working.
Yeah,
right?
Fantastic. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of elements that we'll be able to improve on with our products based on getting a good look at some of the data samples of wearable, users.
So with that app then, is that you pay to get that data, or is there a free version? How does that work?
Yeah, right now it's free. So we just want to we're still learning and we're still in the early stages of the tech. So we're just allowing every user to utilize it for no cost. There could be a revenue model, there could be a monetization model. We've talked about it. We have a few different ideas for that, but right now we're just trying to expand the user base and learn as much as we can.
Do you see that potentially connecting into other products as they get invented, other smart technology where you can sort of put it all together and make some sense on what to do with it? Because that's why I sense a lot. So, okay, I've got all this information now. Great. How do I apply that into my life?
Totally. And that's we have a partnership with Strava and also Garmin. So we're getting some information on runners and cyclists and such. But I think that's what makes it impactful, is that we can have a wide range of individuals, and because you're getting data in real time, we know exactly when you're finished with a routine or you've done a swimming workout, whatever it is. So we can be, hey, look, within 10 minutes we're going to create this routine, and we can actually say, hey, look, you've done this routine 3 times with similar activity levels and it's been effective, so let's give that one again, right? Because the user's responding positively. So there's a whole nother kind of business model around it too. But right now, I think we're just trying to learn as much as we can so we can be sharper with our insights.
Can you look at then, so let's say I go for a run and I'm wearing my Whoop, you can see what's happening on that run as an example. When you recommend, let's say, putting on a pair of Normatech boots, can you see how that impacts it with, are you picking up my heart rate on that? And is that pushing back as well?
Yes.
Oh,
so
right.
Normatech's actually live in Whoop. So you can go in there and you can select, Normatech. It can either recommend a Normatech routine through our HyperSmart, or you can use the Normatech and see how your biometrics are changing.
That's cool.
During a Normatech session. And we launched these in phases. So we're in kind of phase 1 of the Whoop partnership. Phase 2, 3, 4 get more and more exciting as we think about the future roadmap. But yeah, there's so much. I love this space in general because there's a lot of energy around it, and there's a lot of really great companies that are doing really cool things. And I think as there's more education and awareness, people are going to understand how these technologies and devices actually impact their life. And right now we're in the really early stages.
Do you see the meditation one linking into that as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I can see that'd be interesting, watching how your heart rate drops, HRV is affected through the meditation. That'd be fascinating to hook that up.
And that's actually what makes core so cool, is because you can actually see how your body's responding physiologically to meditation and breath training. Right. Whereas in other apps, you're done with the session. How do you feel? Now you can see, okay, my heart rate did this, right? My biometrics change in this way. My recovery score has improved. This is really working.
Right. So that's already doing that.
It's
just not in the HyperSmart app yet.
It's not in the HyperSmart app quite yet. It'll be a couple months away, and then but it is in the core ecosystem.
Right.
Yep.
So what about in club? Obviously, it's an area I'm quite passionate about. But what do you see happening in the fitness facility space in regards to Hyperice then?
Yeah, so this has been a key part of our business model since really, I'd say 2016, right? As a consumer product creator, any business, you have to look at the business from the inside, as you know, and say, like, what is our distribution model? What's great about our products? What are our strengths and weaknesses? And for us, we know that the products are very experiential, right? If we can get you on a Viper roller, or you can get you with a Hypervolt or in Normatech boots, generally 9 out of 10, sometimes 10 out of 10 times, the consumer loves the experience, right? So how do we reach as many people as we can? And our partnerships in the fitness category have been really exciting because they're looking for innovation to add to the experience for their members. And we can help deliver that with an Equinox or a Lifetime, an Orange Theory, or Exponential, or whatever it may be. But at the same time, it allows us to reach more consumers within the ecosystem, really. So it's a win-win, right? If you're an Equinox member and you recover faster, you might come in and engage in classes more frequently, right? So it's been a core part of our model for a really long time, working with the trainers, working with the experts, and trying to deliver solutions around recovery. And I think, as you know really well, because we're working on some really awesome stuff together, I think the recovery space in general is getting really hot in fitness, right? Everybody's thinking about, how do I create, something that is differentiated in my club? And so we're excited about the future there.
Yeah, I think I'm very excited to be having the opportunity to work together with Hyperice, and we've watched that space, and we talked to a lot of people about the recovery areas, and I think people are trying to figure out what to do, but it's a challenge because it's, well, what do you put in it? How do you identify it? There's obviously been issues with, I think, putting guns and rollers in the club isn't new, but stuff gets stolen and guns disappear and then they lose their charge and everything. So putting this solution together with you guys where you can't steal the gun, the content's there to show you what to do, and being able to create a destination where people can go and use something and understand what's happening there. I think we're hopeful that will sort of provide something new to the fitness industry.
Yeah, and there's a challenge there within the fitness industry on solutions, innovative ways to bring the technology to life. When I saw what we were doing from our team, obviously the design elements, it was super progressive, super forward thinking. I think that if we can continue to create seamless ways for people to experience the technologies, then they just become a norm within the fitness community. And that's where I'm excited about what we're doing together, because I think we can reach a lot of people in really creative ways and leverage your guys' 25 years of experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thoughts on the future? I don't want you to give away anything that's top secret, but what are the things that we're probably, and our listeners may not be thinking about, that maybe should spend some time exploring or understanding a little bit more to start to figure out what they should be doing in their businesses or as individuals?
Yeah, I think two trends in the space. I mean, one is the wearable technology data is getting stronger, but also more broad, right? So we're learning, and they're learning more about, the human body than ever before. And when you think about wearable technologies and biometrics and some of the stuff that companies like Whoop and Aura and Apple Health are doing, right? They're still in the early stages of learning about, individuals, not just recovery, but health in general. So I think there's going to be a lot of scientific breakthroughs around, every part of human health through the advancement of wearable technology and how good we get blood oxygen levels, right? Just being able to get to that level of detail, respiratory patterns, and analyzing those changes. So that's a really big innovation that ties into everything, I think. And then the expansion of recovery and wellness rooms and facilities, that has really ramped up too, right? You look at like Pause. I don't know if you've been to a Pause before. Amazing experience. Sweat House. Another one, Hyper Restore Wellness, those type of companies that are creating, recovery experiences as a member, like a member-based audience. Those are popping up all over the place. And I think the fitness facilities are starting to understand that we need to create wellness experiences inside our clubs. And so that thought process is starting to really accelerate. And because of that, I think the consumer is going to be more aware of what they need to do to improve overall health. And from there, I think it transitions into healthcare a little bit faster, right? Because I remember when we tried to originally go into healthcare and we pitched some of the big medical providers a little bit too early on this type of recovery, right? There needs to be more data and science. Now there is. And so there's a huge opportunity just in healthcare in general for these type of innovations to have a really big impact.
When you said that, it's quite mind-blowing, because if you look at any sort of research and the cost to do research and how many people you can get on a study, and to do a decent study could take years just to get that information. And now with the Whoops and the Auras, things that we would never ever have the ability to know about humans suddenly is there, and we have this new awareness of millions of people around the world, what's really going on with us as a society, and then what do we do with that? As you say, it's like just something like sleep is incredible. I'm sure somebody now is looking at this thinking, wow, this we didn't realize this, how much people sleep and what happens to their heart rate, and just things like that. It's quite mind-blowing, and you kind of think how quickly we can progress now we know that information. Agreed.
And we're able to your point, it's all hours of the day. It's a 24-hour cycle, right? And so I think in the past, when you're doing test subjects, it was very segmented. But now we're able to see 24-hour cycles over a week, over a month, over 2 years, over 3 years. And the data collection is just going to make us smarter and sharper and more innovative,
And the thing that makes it even more crazy is I've just been learning about AI. I had Mo Iqbal on. He was talking about that. So I've started playing around with a bunch of AI, and that in itself is just explodes my brain. And so you put that amount of data with AI together, and how it can now, with a click of a button, assess and come up with just summarize all of that with a click of a switch. It's an amazing time to be to be living, isn't it? Really,
it is. And the AI stuff's fascinating, because the way that's going to change. I had a conversation with a private equity company a few days ago, and they were saying that as they analyze businesses now, they're looking at obviously how that business sector could be impacted by AI, and it's one of the top things that they're looking at to make sure that whatever they're investing in can't be disrupted by AI in a extreme capacity. So everybody's thinking about it. There's so much innovation there. It's going to change the way that the world works. And I think every company and every business leader has to be thinking about that.
Yeah.
And how they can use it as a pro and how it could affect them as a con. Right.
I don't think. Yeah. I know it's nothing new, but I've only looked into it and I've been telling a lot of people I know, have you seen this? And I'm amazed at how many people have not just taken the time to play around with it. But when you do play around with it, I did something crazy, like I keep a diary and keep it on my phone, and I just dumped everything in, and I asked it to summarize it, pull out some key points, put a little bit of explanation under each point, create a title, put some questions I could be asking about it, and it's just within a second it just summarized like years worth of random notes, and it was spot on. And then I kind of thought, well, how much other information have we got as companies? Whether it's product sales and information, like just the financial numbers that you could put in there, and it could do something that a whole team of researchers couldn't do in probably 12 months.
I have the exact same experience. We just for fun, we had a bunch of our leadership team kind of come in, and we were kind of just going through a fun exploration around if this company was to merge with this company was going to buy this company, what would it look like? And so we all put ideas down on the board, and then we wrote AI and said if these two companies were to merge, what would be the top 10 points? And it got 8 out of 10. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. So.
Well, my final question then,
Yep.
Jim. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've believed is possible and gone on to make possible. Outside of what we've spoken about today, what would be a memorable example of escaping your own personal limits?
I mean, honestly, I feel like in my current role, I kind of dreamed of being at a company like this, in a leadership role like this, being able to have an impact on a team, a culture, and a category. That's something that I would say since I was 16, 17, I thought it would be really cool if I was here. I'm kind of in that position very humbly, which is fun, and there's parts of it that obviously are challenging, and you don't sleep a lot. But I think that being kind of gracious of the opportunities and being able to have an impact and be involved in a really cool category has been pretty big. And sometimes I'm kind of wow, this is kind of what I envisioned when I was 16, 17 years old. So that's kind of a reality for me and something that just resonates.
Fantastic. Well, Jim, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
It's really fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've got any value from it whatsoever, then please do us a favor, subscribe, tell somebody, and that will help us to be able to continue to do more of these and help you escape your own personal limits. Thanks for listening.